Hi, my name is Stephanie, and I am a massive fan of all things movies, music, and pop culture. And today I wanted to talk about 5 of my favorite movies from the 1980s. Now, these are 5 really random ones. I have like a massive list of movies from the 1980s that are my favorites, but when I first think of like favorites from the 80s, I think of these and also like a whole heap of other ones because never ending. The 80s were full of fantastic movies, and movies from the 1980s tend to have so many pop culture moments and quotes from films that we still quote to this day. The first film in this random assortment of my favorite 80s movies is Purple Rain, which is directed by Albert Magnoli, and it was released in 1984. I will preface this the way I preface anytime I talk about Prince by saying that he's my favorite artist of all time. He's my like hero of heroes, so it wouldn't make any sense if Prince didn't make his way into like majority of my lists that are covering my favorite things of all time, whether it's part of music or movies and pop culture. There's always going to be Prince somewhere on that list. So I grew up with Prince, and I've seen the music videos that came from this album ever since I was a kid. They're part of my DNA. But when I turned, I think 15, I watched Purple Rain for the first time. Here's the album on vinyl. It's the first vinyl album that I ever bought, and I think I became a lot more focused on buying CDs and accumulating a music collection rather than just one-off albums after I saw Purple Rain and realized that it didn't make sense that I didn't own the album, and it didn't make sense that I didn't have like a solid enough Prince collection, considering I knew and have grown up with all of the songs in Prince's discography. With Purple Rain, I think you can feel the energy coming off the screen. You can see that this is an artist who is in control, who is so sure of what they are and what he's doing. I love the band The Revolution, and Wendy and Lisa in the band were always 2 women that I've looked up to ever since I was a kid. I think they were the first examples of women musicians I ever saw. And with that came like so much inspiration over the years, and even now, like I admire them so much. And I just think that it's so cool. And I think that they're amazing, and I think this whole situation is so cool. And this is the other thing. If I had a time machine, one of the places that I'm going to stop is the Purple Rain premiere and just living around the time that this movie came out. I love a pop culture moment, and I love when a film or an album provides that for people, when you almost can't escape it in the best way. And when you hear about how Purple Rain kind of infiltrated the zeitgeist, to me that is an extremely exciting situation, and it gives me major FOMO that I was obviously not around for it. So within my Purple Rain collection at this point is the special edition 2-disc DVD, the soundtrack on vinyl, the soundtrack on CD, and the movie on tape. The second movie in this collection of movies is Amadeus from 1984, which is directed by Milos Forman. Milos Forman also directed films like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which for a period of time when I first was getting into movies was my favorite movie of all time. This film, Amadeus, to me is a masterpiece, but in recent times to me feels like it's become an underrated masterpiece. I feel like it needs to show up more in movie lists that have The Godfather there, you know, all of the best movies of all time. This movie is a fictional storytelling, I guess, of a rivalry between fellow composers Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart and Antonio Salieri. It is not based on fact. There are some truths sprinkled throughout, but it is actually based on the play by Peter Shaffer. This is the play, and I have read it, and I love it, and it is my favorite play. I love the way that these characters are explored. It's about rivalry and jealousy and talent and gifts, and are you born with this natural gift to create versus are you know, trying, and that constant thing of like competing against each other and never feeling like enough. And it's one of those films that has masterful performances and masterful writing, and the music already is stunning because it's all Mozart pieces and other classical pieces as well. This soundtrack is fantastic, and I listen to it so often because classical music is so special and we're so lucky to have it. The other thing that's interesting to me is that Amadeus and Purple Rain were released within the same year, and in my opinion, I believe that Prince is the Mozart of this generation, and to have a movie that was, you know, all about Prince and him becoming like a household name and him gaining all this attention and, you know, becoming a legend is so cool to have up right next to Amadeus, which is sort of covering something similar in a way. When I first saw Amadeus, it really opened my eyes to like fantastic filmmaking as well, and it's just so stunning. I can't fault it. It is a pretty long movie, but it is so worth the watch, and it's worth a rewatch, and it's worth analyzing, and it's worth fanning out over. So the first thing is the director's cut of the movie, which is like a little bit longer, I believe, than like the normal theatrical version. I think I've only seen this version. Next thing is the movie on Blu-ray. Then we have the soundtrack on CD, the play by Peter Shaffer, the movie on tape, the soundtrack on cassette, and the soundtrack on vinyl. I will also say two of my favorite things about Purple Rain and about Amadeus are both of their opening sequences and the way that those movies just start with a bang, with music, and you're in straight away. I could go on about the opening of films and how crucial it is, but especially when it opens with a song or with something that just drags you into the world, I find that both of those movies do that perfectly. The third movie in this collection is Who Framed Roger Rabbit, directed by Robert Zemeckis from 1988. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. I have seen it so many times and I always enjoy it. I've watched it ever since I was a kid. I find that even though like I've grown up watching things like The Simpsons and it's like a cartoon and it's obviously like kids can watch it, but it's not like catered to kids. I find that this is one of the other examples where as a kid you think, oh, cartoons, it's for kids, and obviously it's not. It's like a noir comedy mystery thriller movie, and it is so enjoyable every time. It is so fun. Who Framed Roger Rabbit is one of those movies that it's perfect in my opinion. It's hard to find stuff that's similar to it, and it's just so much fun. And ever since I was a kid, it used to freak me out. Some bits still freak me out, but it's just so much fun, and it's so cool to see certain characters, like animated characters, all in like a scene together. I do remember reading that like one of the like most expensive shots probably in cinema is like having, you know, Disney characters and Warner Brothers characters put together in a scene. Like how cool is that in terms of like pop culture and movie trivia? I love this movie. I will never stop watching this movie, and I think more people need to watch Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Number 4 in this assortment of movies is The Karate Kid, which is classic within 80s movies, and I think a classic in general at this point. This is another one that I grew up watching, and it's one that I revisit all the time. I think that it is the ultimate underdog story. I think that the soundtrack is perfection. Here is the soundtrack. I love all of these songs, and I can only associate these songs with the movie, which is how it usually works. But this is a movie that if people haven't seen it, I almost lecture them to watch it. I almost go like, no, like it needs to be done, you need to watch it. But yes, like Karate Kid is one of those movies where obviously there's like all the sequels and stuff, but this one is just so easy to watch. You don't need to watch the rest of them. I personally love the second one as well. This one is just so special, and it has so much heart, and again, it's one of those movies that is so rewatchable and so fun and inspiring. The final movie in this, again, random assortment of movies is Blue Velvet, directed by David Lynch from 1986. This movie is one that I discovered after I watched Twin Peaks for the first time and was like, I need to watch David Lynch movies, and I watched Blue Velvet, and Blue Velvet became one of my go-to movies to watch like every night. So I've seen it a trillion times. Same as Purple Rain. I used to put on Purple Rain every night just because I wanted to watch it over and over and over again. Blue Velvet is so dark, but it is so stunning, and it's one of those movies where the soundtrack is wonderful, the visuals are stunning. David Lynch just creates this terrifying atmospheric world which is pretty much just like in the suburbs, and you just get to like sit and watch and let this mystery unfold. And the performances are great, and Dennis Hopper is terrifying every single time. This movie is what got me into watching other David Lynch films, and within David Lynch's filmography, I think this one is a bit more like accessible in terms of like storyline compared to something like Inland Empire, which I feel like if you do a David Lynch retrospective, you'd probably finish with Inland Empire because you've got that like background of like, I know what to expect when I'm gonna sit and watch a David Lynch film. With this, I think that this is just a wonderful piece of work, and it is so freaky and so much fun. Anyway, so here are the movies that are just a few of my favorites from the decade of the 1980s. I feel like I could talk about each one of these movies for like an hour at a time, but I'm sure that I can do those individually at some point. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.